Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning everyone, we are from Group 3 and we will present our discussion report about cross-cultural understanding. In this context, Indonesia. And we will start with introducing ourselves first. Let me start with introducing my name. My name is Akmal Putranto, my student number is 230204093.
And my name is Aulia, Fathima Azzahra. My student number is 230204091.
And my name is Narbaeva Kunduzai. My student number is 23020400182.
And my name is Lutfiah. My student number is 230204318.
Okay, so let us start. So, why Indonesia? Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world, with over 7,000 islands, and it is not only rich in natural beauty but also possesses an extraordinary diversity of ethnic groups, language, and traditions. From Sabah to Merauke, its island has its own unique way of life and belief and faith. So studying Indonesian culture means studying a mosaic of human civilization itself. So there are three aspects of culture that we define. The first one, to understand culture systematically and in depth, we need to divide it into three main aspects, which is material, cognitive, and social. So this division is important because culture is not only about physical objects that we can see and touch, but also include system of ideas that shape how people think as well as rules that govern their behavior in society. Using these three frameworks, we can analyze how a culture is born, how it changes due to outside influences, and how it can even influence other cultures. Three cultural aspects. The first one is material field. Tiny objects humans create to fulfill their needs, such as reasonable houses, clothing, tools, weapons, musical instruments, and food. This will show how people adapt to the natural environment. And cognitive analytical field, system of belief, knowledge, and worldview held by a society, including religion, philosophy, ethology, traditional medicine, and values. This will answer what people believe and know. And then social normative field, rules, norms, laws, and structures that regulate how people interact, such as ritual system, marriage custom, social hierarchy, and daily etiquette. So this will answer how people should behave towards one another. Let's start with Sumatra. The fun fact about Sumatra is that Sumatra is not just a lake, it is the site of the largest volcanic eruption in the last 25 million years. So the eruption around 4,000 years will create a massive caldera which will form the world's largest volcanic rise. Sumatra. Let me start with Sumatra original culture. Let's talk about the natural fields. The agriculture, hunting, and migratory structures. Communities build long houses, but not rumah bolong. Example given, using wood and woven bamboo without metal nails, and then what was woven for local or tree bark, handuk, while weaponry uses the wooden blow pipe and the whistle for later. The cognitive or ideological field, original belief system were animistic and animistic, center on ancestral worship and natural spirits. So the universe was seen as divided into an upper world, gods, and middle world, humans, and underworld spirits. And the power came from Tombi, life force, or Sumamat, which could be gained through rituals and specific objects. And the social field, the other social forms were based on matrilineal clans, or Ibarat they call as marga, or matrilineal inheritance, or early interlineal capital. So this was were settled by a council of elders, Mangari or council, and marriage was strictly executed, marrying outside one. This is the sample of Rumagada. This is the animistic and atomistic, and then this is the sample of a lot of plants that appears on Sumatra. Next, Sumatra culture that influenced by other culture. Talk about material field. Trade with India, Arabia, China, and Europe introduced new materials and techniques. Of course, the arrival of Islam brought the surau, bread house, and Arab influenced calligraphy on textiles. And then colonial dance introduced introduced Greek architecture, firearms, and leather, rubber, or coffee processing equipment. Indian cloth material inspired Sumatran songket, weaving using gold or silver threads. And in cognitive field, the arrival of Islam from the 13th century onward profoundly reshaped Sumatran theology. Many pre-Islamic animistic were syncretized or replaced with Islamic theology. Tawhid became reinterpreted as root, soul from Allah, and ancestor veneration was reformed into holy saints, or we call it wali. And in social field, Islamic norms introduced new social laws, prohibition of gambling, pork, and alcohol in the region. For example, given Aceh. The colonial Dutch imposed Western legal systems, changing dispute resolution under control to state courts. And then Islamic marriage laws, dowry, polygamy limits, replaced some customary marriage rules. This is the example of some cat, and then we have squirrel, and then we have Aceh punishment system influenced by Arabic system, and then this one is the interpretation of rule. Last one is the Sumatra culture that influencing other culture. We talk about material field. Sumatra material culture has spread to Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei through migration, and the rendang cooking technique, block cooking made in coconut milk and spices, become signature dishes in the Malay Archipelago, and then the salwa and the talempong are used in performance from Negeri Sembilan to Suriname, where Javan and Sumatera diaspora live. And the cognitive field, the philosophy of alat tambang jadi guru, or nature is a teacher, has influenced environmental thinking in neighboring cultures, including part of Malaysia and the Rio Island. The Batak Christian theology also has become a model for indigenous Christian worship in other parts of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, where the respect is integrated into church. And the last one is social principle of musyawarah, or deliberative consensus from Sumatra desa meeting has been adopted in community planning in diaspora communities in Suriname and the Netherlands. And then the acting system of Gampong village self-defense, originally against foreign forces, influenced community policing models in parts of post-war state. This is the example of musyawarah, and then Al-Mahkamah jadi group where the nature is just, and then talempong, salwa, and then this is rendang technique, the slow one. And then let's move to the Java Island, where it's going to be explained by my friend.
Okay, so next we move to Java. And then Java is the world's most populous island, home to over 150 million people. It is the political and cultural heart of Indonesia, hosting the capital Jakarta. Mount Semeru, Java, the highest peak, and an active volcano towers over a landscape shaped by thousands of years of Hindu Buddhism, Islamic and colonial history. The ancient temples of Buddha and Rabbani stand as testament to Java's extraordinary civilizational legacy. And the first one, we move to Java culture. The first one is the material field. The agriculture centered on sawah, like white rice farming, as the foundation of Japanese society. And then communities built traditional jogo, houses from thick wood with distinctive curved lines. And then the cloth was made through batik, like wax resist dyeing, a uniquely Japanese textile art. And then the weapons included the keris, ceremonial dagger, and bamboo spears. And then the second one is cognitive field. The first one is original belief, where animistic centered on the Javan, a Japanese spiritual tradition federating ancestor and nature spirit. And then the universe was understood through the concept of alus, refined or spiritual, and kasar, coarse or physical. And then the third one is power and cosmic, or derived from wahyu, divine blessing, believed to flow through the ruler. And the third is social field. Javanese society was stratified into three ideas, like aristocracy, santri, is like different Muslim, and then abatan, like syncretic folk, and then the dispute were settled through musyawarah, like deliberation, like by community elders, and then marriage custom were guided by protocol, like mutual cooperation and strict family approval. And then this is the jomblo from Japanese. And then this is the weapon from Java Island called Karis. This is the Priyagi, and then the Santri, and then this is Bati. Then we move to Java, influenced by Indian culture. The first one is Sumatra field. Hindu Buddhist kingdoms introduced stone temples like Borobudur, Prambanan, and Sanskrit monastery. And then the Islam brought mosques and Arabic calligraphy into Islamic motif. And then the Dutch introduced railways, sugar mills, and pre-colonial architecture. And then the second one is cognitive field. The Hinduism and Buddhism shaped Japanese cosmology via still details of Mahabharata and Ramayana. Islam synthesized enemy's belief. Wahyu matched with the Islamic concept of divine grace. The Dutch education spread Western rationalism among the educated cleric class. And another one is social field. The Islam introduced halal, Yazari rules, prayer obligation, and new marriage norms. And then the Dutch rule replaced traditional kingdoms with a Western bureaucratic legal system. And then for the first time, it's like Islamic boarding schools, create a new social structure alongside village tradition. This is Masjid Agung Demak, and then this is the Dutch colonial architecture. This is in the Pekalongan, and then it's called Pesantren, and this is Wayang. We move to Java, influencing another culture. The first one we have cultural field. That's gamelan music is now performed globally through diaspora and colonial trade networks, and then the bagging technique spread to Suriname, the Netherlands, and West Africa. And then tempe has been adopted worldwide as a staple health food. And then the second one is cognitive field. The Japanese concept of rukun, social harmony, influenced the governance thinking across Southeast Asia. And then the Wayang Buddhist spread to Malaysia, Bali, and Papua New Guinea as a ceremonial art form. And then the Pesantren model was adopted for Islamic education in Malaysia and Brunei. And then the third is social field. The Musyawarah of Mufakat was ancient in Indonesia. 1945 Constitution and shaped ASEAN Constitution models. And then the Gotong Royong was carried by Japanese diaspora communities to Suriname and the Netherlands. And then the Japanese then migrated, brought farming, practice, and cultural norms to Kalimantan and Papua. And this is the gamelan. This is the batik used on diaspora. And then this is tempe, the healthy food from Java. Okay, next we have Kalimantan.
So, here is the Kalimantan. Kalimantan is the Indonesian part of Borneo Island and one of the largest islands in the world. It is known for its tropical rainforest, river, biodiversity, and rich indigenous cultures. Kalimantan is home to many ethnic groups, especially the Dayak people, who have diverse traditions, and cultural practices. The island has long become a meeting point for local communities and foreign influence through trade and migration. So, the first, material field. Traditional Kalimantan communities build rumah hutan, longhouses, large the house made from iron wood and leather. A longhouse accommodates many families and requires cooperation and communal life. Traditional objects included anda, a ceremonial mashad decorated with carvings and feathers. People developed rattan, weaving to make baskets, mats, and ceremonial objects. The second, cognitive field. Indigenous communities believe in gathering an animistic belief system centered on spirits and ancestors. Nature was considered sacred. People believed rivers, forests, and trees had spiritual powers. Daily activities like farming, hunting, and building houses were connected to religious beliefs. Ritual ceremonies were performed to maintain balance between humans and the spiritual world. The third, heritage preservation, are the social field. Traditional society followed adat as customary laws, adat regulated marriage, land ownership, inheritance, and conflict resolution. Community leaders gained authority through wisdom and social contribution rather than simply inheritance. Collective responsibility and cooperation were important social values. So this is the Dayak communities, and this is the longhouse of Kalimantan, and here's the weapon, and here's the ceremony. And the second, Kalimantan influenced by outside cultures. The first, material field, trade with China's merchants introduced Lutfiah, large ceramic chairs that later became valuable ritual objects. Foreign influence also brought new technologies and materials into local communities. Some traditional arts and architecture gradually combine local and external elements. Second, cognitive field. Islam entered Kalimantan through Arab and Indian traders. Islamic belief spread especially through the sultanates of Banjarmasin and sultanates of Banjarmasin and Kutai. Some local beliefs blended with Islamic teachings and formed unique cultural practices. Hindu influence also appeared earlier through historical kingdoms and inscriptions. The third, social field. China's migration introduced clan system and merchant organization. New social values such as family-based economic cooperation developed. Intermarriage between local communities and migrants created mixed cultural identities. Traditional customs carefully adapted to changing social conditions. So here's the Kalimantan clothes mixed with Islam clothes, and this is Kampung Cina. That means a village full of Chinese in Kalimantan, and here's religion that is mixed with India, and here's the ceramic chairs. And the last, Kalimantan influencing other culture. The first material field, the tattoo design, influenced global tattoo styles and fabric architects. Traditional motifs from Kalimantan became popular in modern tattoo industry worldwide. Many patterns originally symbolized social status and spiritual protection. And the second, cognitive field, indigenous forest management practices inspired ideas of environmental conservation. Their ecological knowledge became important for community-based conservation systems. International organizations studied best practices to improve environmental policies. And the third, social field, artisan rights systems influenced indigenous rights movement. Community mapping methods were used to defend traditional territories. This idea later inspired similar movements in other communities. Here's the Tarian Tattoo, and here's the Tanah Adat, and here's the teamwork from Kalimantan that is inspired worldwide. And now Sulawesi. Sulawesi has a unique shape that was formed by fierce geological forces, but the strangest fact is that the island is home to the ancient modern shark fossilized teeth found in the mountains, proving that part of Sulawesi was deep ocean floor. More importantly, the oldest known cave paintings in the world, 45,000 years old, were discovered in Maros, Sulawesi, even older than those in Europe. So the Sulawesi original culture, the first material fit, communities lived through rice, farming, fishing, and sago cultivation. The top one, Torajan Grand House, features a dramatic food shed, rope food without nets. Bugis community built finishing schooners and for inter-island trade. Traditional weapons included the bladed short dagger and slow pipes. The second, cognitive field, Saracens followed Aluk the way of the ancestors, governing life, death, and farming. The universe was divided into the upper world, gods, middle world, humans, and underworld, spirits. Ancestor power was maintained through death, feast, and Tau, carved effigies. The third, social field, Torajan society was organized. Torajan society had three classes: noble, commoner, and slave, determining land and ritual access. Bugis society recognized 5 figures, including the Bisu, sacred ritual priests. Disputes were mediated by the two Bina, elder priests, and marriage followed by clan lines. Here's the Sulawesi ceremony and the Sulawesi teamwork. And then here's the Sulawesi traditional house and traditional weapon. And then the second, Sulawesi is influenced by another culture. The first material field, Arab and Indian traders brought new spices, dyes, and iron tools to Makassar's port. Islam introduced mosques, architecture, and Arabic geometric patterns into local design. The Dutch built Fort Rotterdam and introduced firearms and passion fruit farming. The second, cognitive field, Islam reshaped Buddhist values. The concept of Sirik honor was reframed within Islamic moral teaching. Christianity transformed the Latin spiritual life through ancestral rituals, worship, and blended with Christian practice. Dutch education introduced Western rational thinking, producing early Sulawesi intellectuals like Samratulangi. Social field, Islamic law introduced Dowry, halal controls, and new marriage norms among Buddhist community. Thus, colonial role replaced traditional kingdoms with appointed local regents under independence. Christian missions placed Christian communities around church-based leadership instead of elder knowledge. Here's Samratulangi, and this is Sulawesi halal food. Here's Fort Rotterdam, and this is most architecture that is the kind of Islam.
And then the next is Sulawesi planting and culture. The first one we have natural field, the Buddhist finishing shipbuilding techniques spread across maritime, South Asia, and influence with baking tradition is Malaysia and the Philippines. And then the Makassar shaped spice trade route that reached Europe and the Middle East. And then the Canadian coffee is now a globally exported specialty product popular in Japan, Europe, and the US. And then the cognitive field, the Buddhist concept of Siri, Napate, honor and solidarity, influence social ethics across the Malay world. And the direction that visual aesthetic have shaped Indonesian art, film, and cultural tourism. And the Minahasa Kulus, tradition is studied as a model of indigenous cooperative economic in South Asia. And then the social field, Buddhist diaspora communities in Malaysia, Singapore, and Australia build trade network that shape coastal societies across the region. The Buddhist part gender system has influenced global gender studies and anthropological research. And last, the Makassar mutual trading port tradition contributes to early models of regional effective diplomacy. This is the house, and this is the Raja Mofi. This is the marriage, Buddhist marriage, and then this is the ship. Next is Papua.
So Papua is going to be presented by Jenny, and Papua is one of the islands in Indonesia that contains the Sumatra manager, and which is the only equatorial glacier in the entire Pacific region. And located in 4,884 meters above sea level, this ice cap sits right on the equator, yet it has existed for over 500 years. Though unfortunately, scientists predict it will disappear within the next decades due to the climate change. Now I will continue with the original culture of the Papua. The first field is about India field, agricultural center on the sweet potato and vegetable complex, irrigation in a Balanvi valley, traditional Honai rounded men's house, and then a woman's house which is alive, made from the wood and snow and the bark. Noken wooden stick bags, it was being recognized by UNESCO as well, and weapon stones, axes, bamboos, bears, and great wooden bows and arrows. The second one is cognitive field. The cognitive field is animistic beliefs, planetary sectors, and natural nature spirits in forests, rivers, and mountains. Universe understood through the dualistic spirit performance concept was an oral tradition for certain genealogies. And then the next one is power deriving from ancestral languages and ability to communicate with the spirit world. The Lani people developed world and notion of ordering principles of the existence and accessibility through the communal life, land, language, and ancestral memory, mostly about like spirit things. And the ceremonies heritage preservation is a plant-based structure led by Temples, which is sheep, and then the village elders, which is called Ondaki. And next one is distribution settled through the Musawara Oda, which is customary deliberation led by elders also, and most language governed by Moka, right hand praise in shell money and text. And with a straight element externally, and then Kota Royong, Mutawal cooperation in a house building, gardening, and ceremonial feasts. And then as I mentioned before, there's the POA, and then the banks that I mentioned that have been recognized by the UNESCO, they do it by themselves. Next is the Papua being influenced by another cultures. So first one is material fields. So Indonesian introduced poetry and text, chickens and seafaring technology. Next one is Dutch colonial era introduced Greek architecture, steel tools, guns, and animation schools. So Dutch colonialization was really big change in the Indonesian culture. Indonesian government introduced road schools, mosques, churches, and a cash economy. Trade networks introduced rice, maize, shale, and tobacco, all to Papuan architecture. So Papua divided into two parts. So one is considered as an Indonesian part, and then the other one is considered as a one independent country. And next one is cognitive ideological fields. So there was I'm going to talk about a little bit about the religion. First is Christianity, transformed cosmology and simple worship, often synchronized with the Christianity theology. And the next one is Islam established coastal communities, Fathima, Solong, via trade, and Indonesian state influence. And then the next one is Indonesian state ideology, Pancasila, and Western education introduced nationalism and rationalism. And then the last one is social field, where Dutch colonial rule replaced some traditional governments with a Western bureaucracy and courts. Christianity introduced church-based social structures alongside existing place system. Indonesia state introduced formal education, civil registration, and national law, transmigration, progress road, Japanese social norms, and farming and knowledge. So as I mentioned before, Dutch colonization time, and then how Indonesia introduced them to the rice class, and then the church. I mentioned about the religion, and then how they do their worship in the church. And then the last but not least, the Papua influenced another culture. So first one is material field. Asmat wood carving, which calls is now displayed in a major museum worldwide, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York, and the Beachcast Museum for Volunteer. So it's kind of statues from the wood. And then the next one is not recognized as a UNESCO, as I mentioned before. It is the fact that they do themselves, and this even in Europe and in Australia. And then Hawaii tree houses inspired global ecotourism, architecture, and the documentary films. And then the next one is called the identity. The concept of world-life relationship and philosophy has been proposed as a decolonial technological framework in global post-colonial studies and philosophy. and Papuan oral traditions, seven generation genealogies recognized by the ethnobiologists as a machine linear taxonomy. Macronomiary hip-hop expresses Papuanas influencing diaspora communities in Indonesian cities. And then the last one is social narrative field. It's musyawarah adat recognized in Indonesian legal pluralism and regional autonomy laws. Local voting method, vote backs, I mentioned before, upheld by the Indonesian Constitution Court for Papuan elections. Papuan diaspora maintain local radio practices in Java, Sulawesi, and overseas. The Papuan model of the clan-based dispute resolution has been studied by legal anthropologists internationally as an alternative form of state justice systems. As I mentioned before, this is the Asmat book, and then the bags, as I mentioned, and the people are in there.
So, I do believe that we have communication to very cross-cultural understanding in this context, in this culture. There's all for me, Akmal, and
Aulia and Farah.
thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for your attention.